perfect principle we functioned with the Level Up program. We had to introduce it when we knew that there would be a groundswell of support behind it on the council. So we're very thankful for that ability to strategize together, to strategize with staff on how to bring new things forward that make a real difference. I think one of the major principles, though, in addition to that, is that you really have to make sure that your organization, in our case it's the city, is taking care of its business. All the essentials, as mentioned in my bio. I'm so proud that our staff has managed finances with us on council so that we've been able to reconstruct and rebuild roads at a higher rate than we did in the past. We've been able to seek grant funding, so the burden is not only on our residents for all of these changes. Just be really, really creative about how we're going to meet the needs in the community, and I think that's essential. You can't get to some of these projects that address poverty if we also can't address essential services. That helps you also build the trust that's needed. I think there's a famous quote, something about change moves at the pace of relationships or the pace of trust, right? You build trust by building successes or having deliverables, right? And so again, essential services become that. And then also the idea that when you do branch out and work in parts of community building that don't seem like traditional places that cities or cities around here have worked in, that you can change things to work better. We did that with the Level Up program. We made sure we were getting people into the program. A certain level of flexibility versus rigidity, of course, is important. And I would say for leaders in this space, I want to encourage everyone to take advantage, as you are many today, by being here, but the professional development that's needed for elected officials is nothing to sneeze at. I know our council members have gone to the Illinois Municipal League programs. I've brought a council member to the Mayor's Innovation Project. Our membership in that program allows anyone in the city, staff, or council to be a part of that. I've regularly gone to mayor conferences, and a lot of the programs that I've brought to Moline with the help of the council and the staff are pieces of things or direct transfers of ideas that have been shared at those conferences. And I just think that's the bold steps that have to happen if you're really gonna get things done. A lot of that professional development then turns back around and twofold benefits you. This summer, as an extension of work I've been involved with the Abundance Network of elected officials. There's books out there about the Abundance movement that you can check out. The city was able to interview and hire a collegiate-aged intern who's going to help us with some of our programming and background research for things like the Build Moline program that Alderperson Timian introduced this week at council. So you get free technical help, right? You get these resources, these extra set of hands that can help our staff, because staff's already loaded up with the things that we told them in our strategic plan and our budget that we wanted to get done. And then when you add another layer of addressing needs from the council, they might need extra sets of hands. And so that spirit of working together is really important to foster, I think. So finally, I'll leave you with, when you're working on new programs or a new vision for your organization or your community, I think that the leaders have to understand that there is a difference between activism and governing. And until they are able to function between the two worlds and really understand their roles, they won't be as successful as they can be. Sometimes the activism has to come from the ground up, not from the leaders at the dais. Because our job is to vote. Our job is to move programs forward. We have to know all the information. But I think that's a really unique distinction that folks who are very passionate about finding solutions need to understand for themselves so that they can be very successful and bring others along with them and increase that level of engagement. I can tell you that the shelter project this year, while there will always be detractors, there were a whole lot of people that began to be volunteers because that existed, because it existed where it's at. I have the janitor at my building, at my work at Augustana, came and talked to me just a few weeks ago because she had seen some chatter online that was negative about me and about the shelter, go figure. And she just wondered how I dealt with it, and she got into a back and forth with people, and I said, Christie, you have to just let that go. You can't be deterred. She works like 6 to 2 every day at Augustana, then goes and volunteers at the shelter on the weekends, has really engaged with that project, and I'm so proud that there was an opportunity for people to feel important, right, by helping others. And I think we can all cultivate a sentence in our minds when things get tough and people don't believe in what you're trying to do, and just remind yourself who you are and whose you are, and you'll be strong enough for the change.
Wow, thank you so much to celebrate the insight.
I would be so remiss if I didn't emphasize one more time that none of this happens in isolation. There's no way that the change we've brought to Moline could happen without the members of the City Council. And I know that Alderperson Macias and Alderperson Timian are here today. Thank you so much for being strong in your voting, in your beliefs, and how that plays out, and how we work with the community, and of course with staff that take our ideas and run with them and do more with them than we thought possible.
Thank you again to the council and to the staff that are present as well. I think we took special note of activism and governing and understanding how change happens and how important it is to vote and how important are the people that sit in seats that can pull levers of change, being informed and being in dialogue and community is such an important reality. Ron, you work with the continuum of care. Most people may never have heard that phrase. What do we mean by this? Is it a medical term, or what are you talking about in that sense? But even drilling down a little bit further, as you've seen the expansiveness of need stretching across counties and how important it is for counties and municipalities work together at what we're currently confronting. As you look out over the landscape, kind of give us the challenges across it, but also some of the things that we consider to be major wins as you explain the work of the continuum of care, which you have the privilege and honor of serving as this board chair.
First and foremost, let me caveat this. Homeless individuals do not care what neighborhood they live in, what zip code, who their elected official is. They do not care, right? So one of the things that we can do at the continuum is 15 counties. And really it allows us then to work with our partner organizations to erode those municipality boundaries, those county boundaries. Now we still have certain restrictions, obviously. And I would caveat having those conversations with your elected officials, and have them not only when you disagree, which I think is probably mostly when you hear from your constituents, their mayor and elected officials, but have those conversations when you agree, or when, quite frankly, you just don't understand what's going on. That's one of the biggest misconceptions that we have is, you've heard myself, you've heard the mayor, you've heard others talk about, those aren't our people. They're homeless individuals. When did we care that they're in the Davenport area or need to get away from this and start looking at they are human beings, right? And at times we have more compassion for animals than we do homeless individuals. So the continuum really allows us to do that. It allows us to take that big picture window and really look at where the needs are at a macro level. And then we really start having conversations with our elected officials. And as the mayor talked about Level Up, you know, one of the things that we learned last year, we ran the overflow shelter in Rock Island. We learned some very valuable lessons last year. It was very successful last year, but I tell you, it was even better this year. So we went from 14 housed permanently out of last year's shelter. We're at 58 right now. We will be at 60. Thought that was a fire alarm. Thanks. So understanding that, and also, quite frankly, admitting mistakes, admitting you don't know everything. No one organization, no one municipality, no one state is going to solve this, right? It is going to take all of us. There are individuals up on this stage that a year ago, if you had asked me if we would be in partnership, let alone up here sharing a stage with, my answer probably would have been no. And how quickly you can look at and say, okay, this person, they may not want to do it exactly how I want it done, but we have the same end result. No homeless individuals. This is not a difficult concept to understand. So having those conversations very much with community partners, elected officials, and when I say elected, I mean your ward meetings. Go to your ward meetings. Vote. Elections have consequences, both positive and negative. That's right. And don't wait until the actual day to vote to research your candidates. Have conversations. That is where this starts. It's where your grassroots begins. You can do much more in a grassroots effort than you ever will any other way.
Thank you, Ron. You mentioned a couple of things about the kind of shared responsibility of citizenship, how we make ourselves available, how we let our voices be known. As the greatest challenge right now in the United States on a material level is the housing insecurity and the destabilization thereof of so many individuals and households and families. One of the things that I would suggest, and of course this is just me, I have the privilege of standing up here and I have a microphone, but I would suggest no one going into public elected office would enter in without having to answer the question concerning homelessness and the rate of poverty and what their stance are and their ideals concerning such. I think it demands a question to be answered before they get into those seats so that we can wrestle with the reality, knowing one way or another, how do we utilize the power that we have in a vote. I will also say, Ron, you mentioned that the continuum across the counties that we provide supports, technical assistance to the homeless shelters of almost 15 counties and stretching through and forth. The idea is that we utilize the resources that are coming through. You fund actual shelter networks and provide that strength for people to move through the reality of serving individuals that are currently unhoused. The resource movement is so important. I'm going to lynch that over to our wonderful guest, with Christie at the third place. One of the resources you provide is a sense of shared humanity and this understanding that human dignity goes a long way in the work that is moving dollars, moving first, last month in deposit. We can take care of those things, but what we can't always take care of is a sense of who feels like they belong and who feels worthy enough to have a conversation with. Third place was a creation, of course, coming through the experience of you and your co-founder that saw people fully and completely. Ralph Waldo Emerson had this wonderful quote. I can see it on a plaque in the chapel I used to visit. And it said these words, that people see what they are prepared to see. People don't even get a chance to see what they want to see. They see what they have been prepared to see. And your work, what are you preparing the city, community around Rock Island and beyond. We have volunteers from all over the Quad Cities. It's been such a brand acknowledgement. I drive past and I see our teams are working together on a day-to-day basis. What have you been able to see as well, and what is left to be seen in the world?
Well, thank you for having me here today, and thank you all for being here. I think I'm probably one of the people that Ron would have never imagined a year ago that we'd be sharing the stage together and talking about the work that we do collectively. And I feel very honored to be here and to be able to speak to all of you. I think that the third place was really born out of myself and my co-founder Chloe seeing a larger need than just the creation of more affordable housing in our communities. We absolutely need to continue doing that, and we need to do it more quickly than we ever have in the history of at least my life. And we can't forget that people who enter the homelessness system are no longer seen. They're no longer seen by even probably many of us in this room, whether that's the panhandler out in front of Walmart that you don't even smile and acknowledge and you drive past, or the person who accidentally found themselves pitching a tent on your private property and you call 911 immediately. We don't look at them, we don't see them, we don't allow them into public spaces. We've lost a lot of public spaces, so accessing areas where we can build community, where we can find friends, where we can talk to each other about day-to-day things and life, and share jokes together over a cup of coffee. Those folks, our neighbors, those that lose their housing for whatever reason are no longer seen by us. And that's by design. I have worked in homeless services for a very long time and have been a part of larger institutions that saw the work head towards the direction of ending homelessness in our community pre-pandemic, where our numbers were shrinking. And I think you asked what I have seen other than what we choose not to see. I woke up one morning living in a home I've lived in for 12 years in downtown Rock Island, and there was a tent across the street from my house. And it sounds like a really simple thing, and why would that be so profound for somebody that's worked with folks who are unhoused for a very long time? And the reality is because there was never a tent across the street from my house, not until very recently. And so Chloe and I chose to create a standard drop-in center, one that you might find similar resources across lots of our communities in the country and certainly across the state of Illinois, where we can provide basic needs for people, things like laundry vouchers and hygiene supplies and clothing, and all of the things that you might need to survive to the next day. But more than that, we wanted to create a space where people who are not seen anywhere else are always seen when they walk in our front door. So we make sure that we know them by name. We make sure that we know their likes and their preferences. We celebrate birthdays at the third place. We acknowledge their achievements, and we also walk alongside of them when they're struggling. And part of what has made the third place so successful is not just that we have the buy-in, which we do, from an enormous amount of community support. A lot of people that said, hey, you're right, we don't see these folks, we don't provide them the type of community integration that we all need to be successful, thriving citizens in a thriving, healthy community. And you have all, many of you in this room have joined our work. But we also expect that from the people who utilize the third place. We expect their buy-in. We expect them to see the community around themselves as well. And they are what make the third place a fantastic, wonderful place to be every day. And the reason why we thought we would serve only 40 people a week, we looked at the data, we did the research. And turns out we're serving over 100 people a day. And that is because we all want to be seen. And we do not have enough places in our community where we allow people to be seen in all of their messy, wonderful, challenging ways. And we really try to make an effort to do that in a very simple way every day at the Third Place.
Thank you. You mentioned allow people to be fully seen, and there's something about humanity that is at times beautifully complicated. And I love the fact that you and your team don't run away from what you see. Perhaps one of the greatest understandings of what it means to be mature in society, in your own humanity, or growing in maturation, and even with city governments, county, state, is not to run from what you see, but rather run toward with an outstretched hand, or with the sense that even if we disagree, my conversation with you isn't based on agreement. My conversation with you is based on my understandings, or hope to understand you better. And I trust that you would understand me better. And if we can work for a better understanding of shared humanity, then obviously there may be something down the line that we may agree upon. But if we start a conversation with folks based upon whether we agree with what they're doing, you don't have to agree with what you believe they should be doing or not doing. You have to understand why they are doing what they do. And then that will help you to understand a little bit more about not just them, but also more about yourself. Relationships are never simply about the other person, it's about ourselves and how we see ourselves. Your work, Annika, helps us to see ourselves as we see other people through a different lens and light. Your ability to write about these things has become very well known, and how you shape a public understanding through the information that is relayed, investigated, discovered, made public. You're a part of the narrative creation. I have heard it said, and maybe you have as well, that the person that controls the narrative also controls the discussion and the dialogue direction, or even the future. You probably have also heard that until lions have historians, hunters will always be heroes. Somebody else has to tell the other side of the story. Someone else has to look deeper. Someone else has to articulate something that has been missed in dialogue. What have we missed? What's the drive? You are doing these things among many others. What keeps you writing, asking questions, listening in the face of another person?
Yeah, well, do I do the PowerPoint thing, or do you want me to just answer the question?
Well, you can work them in however you
Okay,
choose.
I'll try to address it.
Maybe they'll be answered through the PowerPoint.
Okay, is it up already?
Yep.
Okay, so, and I have notes on my phone, and I have too many things in my hands here, so. So as Dr. Ford said, my name is Annika O'Melia, and I'm here today to talk about storytelling and the power of narrative. Last year, I started something called the Rock Island Line, and I highlight the stories, the people, and the issues that we face in Rock Island, Illinois, which is a city that I love very much. And when I embarked on this adventure, I don't think I really understood what I was getting myself into, and the power of narrative and of storytelling, and how my role in the community would kind of shift in hearing people's stories. So, I think I do that. Okay. So stories build community, and research finds that when communities have robust storytelling networks, whether that's telling stories at the dinner table or through social media or in the local media, that people are more likely to be civically engaged, to trust one another, and to cooperate. And so there's actually a lot of science behind storytelling that I had no idea about when I started doing this. When residents see themselves and their neighbors reflected in stories, they feel more connected to place, more invested in civic processes, and more likely to show up. One of the really cool things that happened last year is a group of unhoused folks and I would go to a bunch of city council meetings, and they would sit and share their experiences and stay warm because it was very cold outside. But when people feel that their stories are being told, whether that's someone living in an unstable housing condition or on the street, they feel seen and want to be a part of the conversation. So, and there's actually research to back that up. So, why is that? Stories do something that data cannot do. So while we talk about poverty rates and shelter beds and housing needs, and those are really important data-driven kind of metrics for policymakers, research can inform us, but stories are what can transform us. And so research shows us that people don't change their mind based on stats alone. They change their mind when they can connect and be kind of transported through the narrative of someone else, kind of tied in with their own sense of values and meaning and purpose, and that those stories are really what change us fundamentally. And as I was kind of researching for this talk, I found a couple studies that I thought were interesting. One study told a story about an Arab Muslim character to people who had apprehension about Arab Muslims. And they found that they could actually measure reductions in their stress level and anxiety after the storytelling, because people felt a connection to a character that increased their sense of community and connection and decreased things like prejudice and bias, and it was bared out in a research study. Another study found that when people were engaged in a story about, and the research frames it as a heroin addict, kind of read that story, that those people carried with them more tolerant and loving and supportive ideas about all people struggling with drug addiction, and that those lasted beyond the impact of that one story that they heard. So I just think that as we're talking about policy and how we address poverty, that making sure narratives are included as a part of that story. This is a video, but I don't know if it'll play. Okay, it's just kind of scrolling through some of the articles that I've written on Rock Island Line. Christie, it's her fault that I've gotten so involved in this, because she came on my podcast and told me a story about what was happening in our community around homelessness, and so I started writing articles, and I think what's really interesting is of everything that I've written, the most popular story was, it was called A Night of Miracles, and it was about the overnight shelter in Rock Island that Martin Luther King Center did. And I think that really reflects that people want to love on each other, that people want to be in a supportive, loving, community where we treat people with dignity. And you'd think that the most salacious stuff, or the stuff that's the most controversial, would get the most attention. But it's actually, people are so hungry for connection and kindness and understanding we share this thing called the human condition. So there is actually science to why storytelling matters. Research has found that when you tell a story that induces a sense of empathy, your body releases oxytocin, so the same thing you have when you have a baby. And that when people have that flowing through them, they're more likely to want to protect and to care for and to kind of see people on the margins. That also creates this like dopamine reward system in the brain, so people want to keep going back to that story that feels good, that makes you feel like you have meaning and purpose. And I see that all the time in the wonderful job you do at the Third Place on Instagram. I feel good when I look at their posts, because this is a heavy topic, but love and connection bring you back to one another and to being engaged, which is interesting. So again, like, the unhoused issue is not on my bingo card. I was like, I'm going to start the Rock Island Line, and I'm just going to tell great stories about Rock Island because I love it. And then I quickly was like, oh, I really care about this stuff, and not everything is great. There's, the world, some bridges have broken, and there's a lot of repair, and you have to first acknowledge the bridge is broken before you can repair it. But the most powerful thing for me has been actually hearing the stories of people who are unhoused. So Christie was like, yeah, this is an issue, and kind of debunked some myths that I think I was believing. And then so I really went out and tried to get to know people who are unhoused. And so I think this is a clip of a man describing how he came to struggle with housing. Can I push play?
Yep, you just,
What do I,
you hit the next. and
how
it
long
will
have you
go. Okay.
struggled with housing?
Only for about 4, maybe 5 years now. Yeah, I mean, we're not stereotypes like what most people think.
How it came to be that you lost your housing?
Yeah, see, for one thing, see that scar in my head, cancer, okay? I probably had $9,000 in the bank, okay? Living right over there, you know, paying cheap rent, and the money I had to pay not to die, okay? And it basically wiped me out, and I just never recovered after that. So, you know, I didn't have Medicaid or anything back then anyway, you know, but the doctor's like, yeah, you know, this is how much money we want, and, you know, otherwise we're not gonna do anything for you.
Yeah.
So my options are die or lose all my money. So,
And just never being able to recover after that?
no, you know how long it took me to, you know, save up all that money? So,
Yeah.
and,
Wow.
and then when I go back to my job, they look at me and they go, you know, they're judging me by the way I look.
You're
You know,
a
yeah,
little
well,
worse for wear after being.
well,
Yeah.
it took a while, you know, about a year, where I didn't look somewhat hideous, you know. Well, when you get, yeah, when.
They were saying he
when
still
you
looks
get-
hideous, his friends were saying.
When you get, you know, all that cut out of your head or whatever, and the doctor goes, you wanna look at it? And I go, yeah.
Okay, so, that was a conversation I had with 3 guys sitting outside the Rock Island Library. And then this next short clip is, it's right when the overflow winter shelter would have opened in Rock Island, hopefully without the social service ordinance. I was out one night just kind of trying to get a sense of what is it like to be really cold. And it was only 26 degrees, I think. I'm trying to advance it, but it doesn't. How long have you struggled with housing? Oh, there it goes. Is that the right one? I think it's the next one, if you can help me.
It's the same one. It must have, it's,
Oh, it went twice. How long have you? Well, if you find it, there's like one more slide in there, you might have to like click out, because I was having trouble advancing the video, but I'll skip it. It was just someone talking about the experience of being cold and how, you know, your body loses all its heat to the concrete. There's a couple guys talking about it, and then they were actually, had just heard that a woman had passed away, kind of reflecting on her passing and how scary it was to consider that for themselves. And so, so when we talk about narrative and the issue of poverty, when I started kind of exploring this issue, I got the same set of photos from multiple people, kind of saying to me, you know, what are you doing? Look at this, look at these people, how are we going? And I started to hear a narrative. Our city will never be successful if we have people outside. This is dangerous. It's, people are choosing to participate in addiction, they're not wanting to go to shelter. So that's a narrative, and those narratives drive how we feel and think about things, they drive policy decisions, they drive kind of a mob mentality of how we're going to treat people in a society. You could hear things about kids in a high school in Rock Island. You could hear things about people across the world. And that will inform what do we feel our responsibility or kinship or whatever is with those people. So I got these same slides and it was like, look at these people, look at them outside. My friend and I, who's here, joked that, well, what if we were standing outside? You know, and maybe not wearing, maybe wearing what I normally wear around my house. Would I be that person? Because these are just people outside, mostly being poor. That's mostly what we're looking at. So these pictures came to me and it was like, you're gonna ruin Rock Island by covering these things. And then I got to know a bunch of the people who were actually in those previous pictures. And these are some pictures that I took when I was visiting the third place one day with permission. These things are shared with permission. And these are some of the same people that were highlighted as being out on our streets. once you see them up close, you feel safe, and you feel kindness, and you feel connection, and you feel like you hear their stories, you kind of get a better sense of why they're in that situation. Then you start to think, that could be me, that could be my brother, or my cousin, or, and then you start to think, wow, what is wrong with the systems that we have in this country? And that's just a really cute dog that I put in there. That's Christie knows, that's Trevor. And then this is a video, we don't have to play the video, if you can show the next picture. So this is Aquila, which is Akeem and Lexus's baby. So one of the pictures of one of the men and one of the other slides I got from different people in Rock Island, him and his partner were unhoused, they're housed now. This is their beautiful little baby. This is the human being that we need to be investing as the future of our city. And seeing every single person, as we're shaping policy and thinking about what we do, like, and Christie had a baby shower for them at the third place. So this idea of community and mattering. And so just before I end, I just wanted to read just a couple things. This is the work of storytelling. When more stories are heard, more people are counted. When more people are counted, policy can be written for more of us. And every story that gets told about a person navigating poverty or seeking help from a city that doesn't always make it easy, or building something beautiful in a neighborhood that's been told it has nothing and is nothing, that those stories expand the circle of who matters in the room and who matters when decisions get made. And one more thing that research tells us, stories don't just change minds in the moment, they have what researchers call a sleeper effect. The change in attitudes becomes more pronounced over time, and people become more certain that their new perspective is correct. We can't tell a story once. We need to be telling it all the time through your own lived experience, at the dinner table, out in the community, on your own social media. The formal media that we have in the Quad Cities, I think, covered the housing issue really well. But we need everybody to be telling stories, as the capacity of storytellers has kind of gone away in some ways. So that's why the Rock Island Line exists. It's not just to document Rock Island as it is, but to expand who gets to be a part of the story of what it can and will be. Thank you.
I'm glad to show the baby. We can keep the image of the baby before us. We welcome the baby into this world. John Dewey, the great educator in Lyon, said that what the best and wisest person wants for his or her own child, that must the entire community want for all of his children. Anything less is unlovely, and left unchecked threatens to destroy democracy. I believe that our shared humanity builds a sense of democracy and promise. We're going to end with 1 minute across the line of their closing thoughts, and we can do it in a minute apiece as we kind of go through and have that. What gives you hope, and what's your next major project? We'll start all the way back at the end at the state level. T-Baby?
So what's giving me hope is actually all of this work that's happening at the local level to really be able to change